A warden fights the hardest battles, he told Arlo, and needs the sharpest blade. With that, Eivor gifted Arlo his own sharpening whetstone. Whether these beasts were named for their spines, or for some past unforgivable deed, no rat knew. Either way, Arlo was about to find himself at the pointy ends of this brood. Even young Backstabber Red attacks were brutal, but a well-timed dodge would see Arlo escape unscathed. This backstabber lived up to its name with its deadly white attack, but Arlo's shield could block the deadly spikes. This young one used vicious yellow attacks. Arlo had to time his parries perfectly. This mother had left her young to fight alone, but the same could not be said of Lord Eivor as he leapt to his son's side. It was Lord Eivor's mighty blade that took her head, but the fight was won together. Arlo had found the reason his friends had fled. The taunting shrieks revealed that this was Baron Frostavik, son of the Darkwing who took his father, and therefore a perfect target for his revenge. His foe was beaten, but seeing what had been inflicted on Hilda and Krunk, Arlo's need for vengeance was only growing. Suddenly wished to be within the walls of Winter's Edge, to hear the boot and boom of his father at dawn, a sound he realized he'd never hear again. He needed to return to whatever was left and make his plan. Was already locked in battle with the Slither Scale. He would not survive long fighting alone. The young ranger was a fierce fighter, but no match for the Slither Scale. He barely thanked Arlo for helping him in this fight before he took off, seeking another. Arlo could not leave him to fight alone. There was no stopping him until the Slither Scale was defeated. The Slither Scale's lair. It would end its tyranny here and now. The Slither Scale was defeated at last. The young ranger took no spoils, and with only a brief hoot of thanks, he was gone. Arlo hoped the ranger's thirst for revenge was finally sated. Arlo braced for an onslaught of tiny, deadly feet, but the second nest was empty. As he started to destroy the nest, he felt the fur on the back of his neck stand on end. Understood now how one beast could feel like an army. He wondered if he would get a bonus for felling this giant as well. The giant death march was fast, but Arlo's tracking was faster. Just in time, as it had already found a victim. Was grateful for the rescue. They had been collecting herbs at the ditch opposite the village when the Death March attacked. It still had business there, it seemed. large had made its nest here. When the villager disturbed it, the giant creature chased them away in fear for their young. This army was defeated, and Arlo was surprised to feel a small pang of regret. The creature had only wished to protect its nest. More bottles lay outside the forge, which was otherwise as quiet as every other dead thing that haunted this place. The pile of bottles was large, even for one who drinks like a merman, and it seemed to be breathing. Arlo was amazed the merman could swing his hammer, let alone see who he was hitting. A couple of thumps on the head soon brought him to his senses. Something else came his way. Tumbling down the temple stair, Arlo was met with another horror. The head of the smith. It was Arlo now who took up the battle cry. tried not to think of how many friends, old and new, lay dead. He still had more to do. Rita and Ruby were free, but without their father, there was little for them here. Arlo offered them a new home at Winter's Edge, and a forge to continue in their father's footsteps. The mermaids were grateful, and said they would find their way to the keep once they had laid Ron to rest. They crept up on the eight-legged monstrosity as she ensnared another frog in her webs. Was thick and tough, but their blades soon cut them to ribbons. Short Tongue sent the terrified frog toward Bogmire Forge. Injured though she was, the queen had no intention of giving up her hunt. Her young hungered. Another villager freed. They too headed for Bogmire, and Arlo wondered how many more frogs it could take. A dank and unsettling place. It had to be the Queen's lair. Arlo wondered what his father would say if he could see him risking his life for frogs. Tailspinner Queen was dead, and the frogs were soon at work rebuilding the village. The warden was sure mammalian-amphibian relations would be forever changed. As they came to the top of the ruins, they saw Little John. His smile at the sight of his father was the last he ever made. In a flash of bad teeth, his young life was ended. Robin's rage was terrible. He charged at the Darkwing, unleashing a hail of arrows. They defeated the beast in a fury that sent all other bats from the ruin in terror. Robin was bereft. It was meant to be a simple hunt. He could not understand these flying abominations. Arlo offered what solace he could. Tuck was at Winter's Edge, where Robin could take some rest. Arlo could hear the terrified squeaks of the villagers chained inside. Only the Dark Room General had the key, and she would not hand it over alive. Arlo needed no more reason to kill her. The villagers were safe for now. Arlo asked if they would help at the farm. The bug milk needed to flow again. The Night Eyes circled the shrine. As Arlo looked closer, he saw Lorenzo, blood pouring from his arm. This strange cult of owls were no healers. Final cultist defeated, the Elder drew something from his cloak. Lorenzo's arm. He swallowed it whole. Arlo soon wished that had been the worst of it. dead, and Arlo woke Lorenzo, who was as afraid as he was pained. Arlo sent the scared badger home where his brother was waiting to help him. No stealth claw, but an attack nonetheless. A band of warrior frogs harassing the village blacksmith. Their eyes lit up at the sight of Short Tongue, only they called him by a name which we need not repeat here. Short Tongue and Arlo returned the insult, and with more than words. The blacksmith was glad to head to Bogmire in safety. All should have been silent in the blacksmith's wake, but Arlo was suddenly aware of a squelching of mud around them. The stealth claw was here. Won this round, but they could not leave it at that. Frog and Rat agreed to hunt the stealth claw to its lair. From afar, the villagers seemed lifeless, lost in battle or to the cold. But up close, the truth was revealed. They were training dummies. It was a trap. The assassin was vicious, but Frog and Rat held their ground. Injured, the attacker fled, but Short Tongue was not about to let him escape. The pair found him licking his wounds at a makeshift camp. The assassin seemed to forget his pain as he took up his weapon. With the assassin defeated, Arlo breathed a squeak of relief. But Short Tongue was not done. He needed to know who had sent them. The frog's frantic search through the assassin's belongings gave up the answer. A gold coin bearing the mark of Glubba the Gutt. Short Tongue asked Arlo to meet him at Bogmire. He had work to do. The warlord sat surrounded by enslaved frogs and laughed at the pair's demands for their freedom. He had a surprise for his guests. The stench of the dungeon hit them as hard as his floor, a floor that started to shake, and from the shadows emerged the largest Toadcor that Arlo had ever seen. And frogs slayed the beast, its bloated corpse sinking slowly into the mud. Arlo felt a pang of regret. It had been a slave as much as the others. They found the warlord's soldiers celebrating the pair's defeat. Rat and Frog were happy to correct them. Seeing the last of his soldiers fall, Glubba croaked his rage. He was the greatest warlord of all frog kind, and they would regret this day. Offered the frogs a home at Bogmire Forge. Together, he and Arlo had freed the rift as well as the frogs. Perhaps this would be an era of peace for both. It was eerily quiet at the ruins. Tuck had everything ready for the trap. It only needed Arlo to toss the blood fruit into the cooking pot. The stench would be sure to attract the beast. They only needed to wait. A high-pitched shriek pierced through Arlo's dreams, and soon the flapping of wings was upon them. Doc asked if Arlo could carve its beak from the beast's remains, the perfect centerpiece for his new shop. The young rat could barely contain his excitement and ran off, keen to find the builder at Winter's Edge, now able to build the shop of his dreams. Sheepbug's pungent scent makes them easy to track. The few that were left were terrified. Arlo had no sooner realized who the culprit must be, and it was upon him, a mudwyrm of the deep. The mudwyrm turned and sped away, but Arlo followed. Perhaps it would lead him to the cow grub. The cow grub mooed, lying helpless at the center of the nest. Arlo would have to deal with the mudwyrm first. The prize cow grub was still alive and mooed gratefully at Arlo. It was almost as happy to see him as the elder would be at its return. Raised his war horn. Its unearthly screech seemed to stir the very air into fury. This was not the wind, but the beating of leathery wings. Defeated, but they had to warn the rabbits. Darkwings were on their way. Kazak had sent one of his strongest generals, Necromancer Gouraz. His defeat would rob the bats of a great weapon. Warren was safe in rabbit paws once more. Gray Ears swore that if the Warden of the Wastes ever called for help, the rabbits would answer. Doug was an unlikely opponent for the first round. His small stature made it hard for him to wield a sword, but when it came to fighting for his king, Doug stood 10 paws tall. Was no match for Arlo's superior skill. Reggie could already see this would be a tournament that they would squeak of. Denis, veteran of the Green Wart's War and captain of the Royal Guard, would be a true challenge for Arlo. The crowd's cheers for the king's brother echoed off the arena walls. Veteran too, used to fighting monsters and darkwings with ice under paw. Denis did not compare. Now the crowd cheered for him. Arlo's final opponent was the king himself. Reggie had seen off the frog invaders almost single-pawed and was beloved by his subjects. This fight would be a tale for their times. In stature and skill, there was not a whisker between them. They shook paws in truce. No rat could doubt Arlo's worth now. Reggie said to meet him by the docks. Together, they would wipe out the Dark Wings once and for all. Together, they would attack Mount Cauldron. Inside the castle, they found themselves in the chef's store. Before they could be disgusted at the contents, they had to take care of the chef. moved in step, a flawless dance of blood and vengeance. Neither knew that their own blood united them, but perhaps, just then, they felt it. Harlow found Rita battling the Darkwing Smith. The Smith's mighty hammer soon overpowered her. Darkwing Smith. The fiery heat at the heart of the mountain burned hotter than any forge. Rita moved, clutching to life. Harlow ordered Erica to take her to camp. He would continue alone. They entered the huge throne room. They finally set eyes on the foul, laughing figure of Count Kazak, sat on his icy throne. Turtle kneeled exhausted before him. This pained the warden more than he could explain. Kazak left his beast to fight them. He had a king to kill. Harlow and Robin fought with all they had, their hope driving them on. The beast fell, but there was no time to rest. Leaving Robin to tend to Bertle, Arlo headed to the summit to find Reggie. The burial chamber revealed both tales were true. A treasure hoard, and guarding it was the ancient Draugr Harat Bluefang. Fearsome warrior, now laid to rest. More importantly, Arlo had found his treasure. The icy wind bit at his fur as he emerged on the peak. He saw, silhouetted in the mist, Count Kazak, and in his claws he held King Reggie, dangling over the edge. With a shriek of victory, the Count let go of the king and seemed to melt into the fatal mist. They flew into battle. The warden and the Count's weapons clashed, echoing across the mountain. Corrupted body fell heavy on the ground. Arlo rushed to the edge, calling for the king, But the only answer in the mist was the icy wind. The war was won, but Arlo could not feel the victory. He barely noticed his friends join him. The Fellowship bowed their heads in honor of their brave king. The tale of this war would be as much of loss as of winning. They returned to the Crimson Keep in near silence, each with their thoughts. There would be no victory parades. Arlo heard a commotion ahead. In the throne room were raised voices. Bertle stood in front of Reggie's throne, holding the crown, asking who should now carry this burden. Denis barged forward to claim it. He was brother of the king. It was his by birth. Robin stepped forward and proclaimed that Arlo was rightfully king. Without him, there would be no kingdom to rule. He had proved himself on the peak. He was not alone. Leaders of the clans stepped forward and echoed their favor of the warden. Arlo objected. He had no claim here. Bertle slammed his staff into the floor to silence the rising voices. He had a secret to tell. Arlo's father was King Rattus. Bertle himself had delivered him as a child to the warden. He had a claim, if he was willing to take it. Arlo felt the truth of it, and the paw of destiny seemed to push him forward to take his place upon the throne. Bertle placed the crown upon his head. The weight of rule was his now. Denis had been forgotten in the shouts of joy from the clans. He raised his blade and swore vengeance. It was his birthright, and he would reclaim it from this usurper. Arlo set aside the warden and became the king. A new dawn broke over the land, bright and clear. The king sensed it would not last. The promise of his half-brother would surely mean war would come again. But that, as they say, is a tale for another time.